Medieval psychology was a fascinating and often alarming mix of ancient philosophy, religious doctrine, and folklore with zero empirical science. Here are some classic examples. The Four Humors Galenic medicine. This wasn't just medieval, it dated back to the Greeks, but it was the dominant model. The idea was that your personality and health were governed by four bodily fluids. Blood, sanguine, cheerful, sociable, amorous. Phlegm, phlegmatic, calm, unemotional, sluggish. Yellow bile, choleric, ambitious, energetic, prone to anger. Black bile, melancholic, introspective, creative, prone to sadness and illness. An imbalance caused both physical disease and mental states. Melancholia was literally too much black bile. Treatment: it could involve bloodletting, induced vomiting, or eating specific foods to rebalance your complexion. Wandering womb hysteria, another ancient idea that persisted. It was believed a woman's uterus could move around her body, causing symptoms like anxiety, fainting, or emotional outbursts depending on where it lodged. Treatments involved placing sweet-smelling substances near the vagina to lure it back, or foul ones near the mouth to repel it. This is the root of the term hysteria, from Greek *hystera, womb. Demonic possession and spiritual malady. Unexplained mental illness, epilepsy, or even unusual behavior was often attributed to demonic influence, divine punishment, or witchcraft. Treatment ranged from prayer and exorcism to more brutal treatments aimed at driving the demon out. Physiognomy, the belief that you could judge a person's character and soul from their physical appearance. A dog-like face meant a servile nature. A high forehead indicated intelligence. Certain features were linked to specific animals and their traits. This pseudoscience was used to justify prejudice and social hierarchy. The stone of madness, a bizarre surgical belief that conditions like psychosis or epilepsy were caused by a literal stone, lapis insanis * in the head. There are paintings like Bosch's The Cure of Folly depicting surgeons trepanning drilling the skull to remove this non-existent stone. These ideas were powerful narratives that shaped how people saw themselves and others. They provided explanation and a flawed sense of control in a world where the mind's workings were a profound mystery. And now, for your sleep story. What you're describing sounds like the perfect, brain-calming infotainment to fall asleep to. Let's imagine how that 2-hour video might be structured, weaving together your elements. Title: Concept, Embers and Empire. Historical whispers by the fire. The setup: a slow, lingering shot of a deep, crackling fireplace, the classic, Yule log, style. The audio is pristine, the low roar, the soft snaps and pops. A narrator with a calm, steady, slightly gravelly voice begins, speaking just above a whisper. The format: each chapter or tale begins with a well-known, almost mythical fact about a historical figure, and then gently unravels a more complex, human, or forgotten truth. Sample: hidden truths, weaved into soothing story. 1. Alexander the Great. Not just a conqueror, but a networker. The story of his vast empire softens into the less discussed fact of his *30+. Alexandria. Cities, strategically placed not just as military forts, but as revolutionary hubs of cultural exchange, creating history's first attempt at a globalized network. 2. Cleopatra, the scholar, not just the seductress, move past the Hollywood tropes. The soft voice details her reality, a fluent speaker of 9 languages, a formidable naval commander, and an author of texts on pharmacology and cosmetics. Her power was intellect and political savvy as much as charisma. 3. Vlad the Impaler, the creation of a monster. The infamous Dracula myth is introduced, then the story delves into the geopolitical nightmare of his childhood, given as a hostage to the Ottoman Empire to secure his father's loyalty. His brutal methods, the story suggests, were forged in that crucible of trauma and constant siege mentality. 4. Joan of Arc, the voices in context. Her divine visions are presented not as a psychological anomaly, but through the medieval lens. The story explores how in an era of fervent faith, mystical experience was a recognized, if rare, category of human experience. It reframes her not as mentally ill, by our standards, but as operating within the spiritual logic of her time, which made her power so undeniable to her followers. The sleep psychology behind it. Monotony and low stimulation. The constant fire, the steady voice, the lack of loud sounds or musical swells are designed to lower heart rate and coax the brain into theta waves light sleep. Engaging but not gripping. The stories are interesting enough to distract your monkey mind from the day's anxieties, but not so suspenseful they keep you awake. You're learning, but passively. Familiarity and safety. Tales of war and drama, when told in this ultra-soothing context from the safety of your bed, create a feeling of comfortable dread, like being safely inside during a storm. Final thought. Your prompt beautifully juxtaposes the chaos of medieval misunderstanding with the modern quest for calm and nuanced truth. We've gone from blaming the uterus for anxiety to using carefully crafted narratives about the past to soothe it. That, in itself, is a remarkable story of human progress. Now, close your eyes. Imagine the fire's glow on your eyelids. Let the crackle fill the space between your thoughts, and drift into the gentle unraveling of history. Sleep well. The fire crackles, a log settles with a soft sigh. The narrator's voice, even softer now, continues. Welcome back to the embers. Tonight, let's leave the rigid certainties of later eras and drift further back, to a time when the line between history and dream was as thin as the morning mist over a Celtic bog. We'll visit a figure wrapped in legend, whose story is less about a hidden truth, and more about a lost world. The story of Boudica, not the queen you imagine. Most see her as the archetypal warrior queen, flaming red hair, riding a chariot, leading a bloody revolt against the Romans. A symbol of fierce, untamed resistance. And she was. But let's soften that fiery image for a moment, and look at what was lost beneath the tramp of legionary boots. Before the Romans came, the tribes of Britannia did not think in terms of kings and queens as we, or the Romans, understood them. Leadership was often matrilineal. Power and property flowed through the mother's line. When Boudica's husband, Prasutagus, a client king of the Iceni, died, he left his kingdom jointly to his daughters and the Roman Emperor Nero. He was trying to play by two contradictory rulebooks. To the Romans, this was nonsensical. Women could not rule in their own right. A kingdom was a piece of property to be inherited by a male, or annexed. Their brutal response, the flogging of Boudica, the rape of her daughters, was not just cruelty. It was a forceful lesson in a foreign political grammar. They were erasing a system of power they couldn't even see. So Boudica's revolt was more than revenge. It was the last, cataclysmic eruption of an ancient way of being. She wasn't just fighting for her personal honor, but for a societal structure where her daughter's inheritance was a natural right, not a Roman legal absurdity. When she was defeated, that older world didn't just lose a battle, it was systematically dismantled, its logic paved over by Roman law, Roman cities, Roman family structures. Her hidden truth, she is remembered as a defiant queen, but she was, perhaps, the final, tragic chieftain of a civilization that valued a different kind of power. Her flame was the brilliant, dying light of a matrilineal dusk. A long pause, filled only by the pop and whisper of the fire. Let the heat of that ancient struggle fade now, into the gentle, ambient warmth of the hearth. Let your mind wander to a different kind of secret, not of war, but of quiet, steadfast belief. The hidden life of the medieval scribe. We picture them in silent scriptoriums, copying texts word for word, line for line. Paragons of obedient preservation, but they were human. And humans, even devout ones, grow weary, become playful, or harbor silent dissent. If you know where to look, in the margins of psalters, at the ends of chronicles, tucked into the loops of illuminated letters, you find their whispers. These are the micro-rebellions of the medieval mind. Look here, in the bottom margin of a heavy theological tome. A tiny, meticulous drawing of a snail battling a knight. A joke. A comment on the futility of earthly struggle. No one knows. It is a thought, made visible, that had nothing to do with the text. Or here, at the end of a perfectly copied chapter on saintly virtues, a scribe writes in his own hand, "Now I've written the whole thing, for Christ's sake give me a drink." Another finishes a freezing winter's work with, the parchment is hairy, and the day is dark. The ink is poor, the vellum is beastly. It's time to stop, asterisk. And sometimes, the rebellion is in the work itself. A scribe copying a text he finds politically dangerous might make a tiny, deliberate error, omitting a word, changing a phrase, altering history with the flick of a pen, a silent correction from the shadows. Their hidden truth. They were not just photocopiers. They were the first filters, the first editors, the first to leave human fingerprints of boredom, humor, and critique on the monolith of tradition. In their quiet cells, they maintained a fragile, personal link to their own humanity. The narrator's voice grows slower, more rhythmic, blending with the fire's constancy. So we see, history is not just the grand narrative, the humors of the body politic, the clash of empires, it is also the lost grammar of a society, and the secret sigh of a tired man, 800 winters ago, wishing for a warm drink. It is these small, human notes, that make the past breathe, and soften its edges, into something we can almost touch. Let the warmth of the fire be the weight of that old parchment, let the crackle be the sound of that quiet, enduring quill, tracing not just letters, but the timeless, gentle rhythm of a mind at work, and then, at rest. The fire burns down, glowing embers pulsing softly in the dark. The narration fades, leaving only the sound of the hearth, a timeless companion for sleep. The silence deepens, the embers now a constellation of low, orange stars in the hearth. The silence stretches for a full minute, a soothing void. Then, a whisper returns, softer than before, as if speaking from within a dream. Let's travel further down, to a place where history is not written on parchment, but felt in the bones. To a truth not hidden in texts, but embedded in the very land we walk upon. Close your eyes, and see not a face, but a shape upon the earth. The long shadow of the common field. Forget kings and queens for a moment. Think of the peasant, knee-deep in mud, rhythmically swinging a sickle. His life seems the very definition of unchanging toil. But his mind, his psychology, was shaped by a revolutionary and deeply communal technology, the open field system. Imagine a vast, unfenced field surrounding your village, divided into long, thin strips. Your family does not own a compact plot of land. Instead, you hold a scattering of these strips, one here on the fertile slope, one there in the stony patch, two more by the stream. And your strips are intermingled with those of all your neighbors. This was not inefficiency, it was profound social engineering. It created a psychology of mutual dependence. No one could hoard all the good land. Your plow team, a hugely expensive asset, was shared. The harvest schedule, the grazing of livestock on the stubble after harvest, the replenishment of the soil by leaving a field fallow, all of this was decided by the village as a whole, in meetings under the old oak tree. The hidden truth here is a lost mindset, an ingrained, practical communism. Your survival was literally woven into the survival of your neighbor. Individual ambition was checked by collective necessity. Enclosure, the fencing off of these common lands into private property, was not just an economic shift. It was a psychological earthquake. It shattered that ancient web of mutual obligation and replaced it with the isolating, anxious psychology of the independent farmer, alone on his own plot. The commons wasn't just land, it was a shared state of mind, and its loss created a loneliness in the human spirit that we are still navigating today. A soft, windy sigh seems to pass through the fireplace, making the embers glow brighter for a moment. From the collective soil, let us drift to the most solitary of places, the anchorhole. The cell of an anchoress. The woman in the wall. Picture a small stone room, a cell, built permanently against the side of the village church. It has 3 windows, one into the church, to receive the Eucharist and hear Mass, one into the parlor, to give counsel to townsfolk who seek her wisdom, and a small one to the outside world for food and waste. A woman, often of noble birth or great piety, would be sealed inside this room in a solemn ceremony, after which she would never leave it. She would die there. To our modern mind, this is the height of pathological isolation, a living burial. But what was the hidden psychology, the appeal? It was the ultimate act of strategic withdrawal to gain immense, soft power. The anchoress, by removing herself from the world, from marriage, from childbearing, from the market square, became a living symbol. She was not a nun, moving in a communal female world. She was a solitary, a rock. And in that stillness, her power grew. From her window, she became the village's psychiatrist, confidant, and social media feed. She heard secrets, settled disputes, advised on love and business. Her prayers were considered especially potent, as they came from a place of perfect sacrifice. Kings and queens sought their counsel. By embracing the ultimate constraint, she achieved a freedom and influence unavailable to any other woman of her time. Her cell was not a prison, it was a fortress of the spirit, and its single window was the lens through which she quietly governed the hearts of her community. Her truth, that in a world of chaos, radical limitation could be the source of unparalleled depth and connection. The narrator's voice is now so slow, the words seem to form from the sound of the embers themselves. So you see, the history that soothes us to sleep, is not just one of events, but of inner landscapes. The communal mind, of the strip field, the sovereign mind of the woman in the wall. These are the quiet echoes, in the vast cathedral of the past. Let the warm stones of that imaginary anchor-hold, become the walls of your own rest tonight, safe, contained, profound in your peace. And let the common field of your thoughts, lie fallow, and shared with no one, but your own drifting dreams. The last word melts into the soft, endless crackle. The video's screen remains, fixed on the deep, pulsing heart of the fire, for the remaining hour of its runtime. A space for nothing but rest. The fire has settled into a deep, quiet hum. The glow is low and rhythmic, like the breathing of the earth itself. When the voice returns, it carries the texture of old stone and distant rain, barely audible. Now, let us slip from the fortress of solitude, into the murmuring crowd. To the greatest, most chaotic cathedral of the medieval mind, the pilgrimage road. Imagine not a single pilgrim, but the road itself, the mud, the worn stones, the constant flow. 1,000 stories walking. Here, the psychology was one of sanctified disorientation. You left your name, your rank, your fixed place in the world at the edge of your village. On the road to Canterbury, or Compostela, or Jerusalem, you were simply a pilgrim. A beggar and a lord might share a wineskin, their blisters equalizers of the soul. The hidden truth of the pilgrimage was not the destination, but the license of the journey. It was a societal pressure valve. To be a pilgrim was to have permission to be lost, to beg, to sing off-key hymns with strangers, to weep openly for sins real or imagined. The grimy, footsore, collective trudging was a form of mass therapy. It externalized the inner journey of penance, making it literal, geographical. You could walk away from your guilt. And when you returned, with a scallop shell or a palm frond pinned to your hat, you were not just forgiven. You were translated. You had been dissolved into the stream of humanity and had returned, remade. The road was the therapist, the miles were the prayer. A log collapses inward in a shower of silent sparks. The voice sinks deeper. From that river of souls, let us follow a single, peculiar tributary. A whisper from the sickbed. A theory of illness so poetic, it outshone truth for 1,000 years. The sigh of a star, the shiver of a planet. Before germs, before viruses, there was the sky. Medieval medicine believed in astral influence with a certainty we reserve for gravity. But it was more beautiful, and more personal, than simple horoscopes. Consider the sweating sickness that would strike England in violent waves. To the medieval physician, it was not a pathogen. It was a poisonous constellation. They believed a certain alignment of planets, say, Saturn and Mars in a malign aspect, could literally pull upon the earthly and watery elements of the body. It would draw the noxious humors up from the viscera to the skin, causing a fatal, drowning sweat. The treatment, not to fight a bug, but to reattune the patient to a healthier celestial music. Herbs picked under a benevolent Jupiter, prayers timed to the phases of the moon, amulets engraved with the seals of Venus. And the most profound of all, melancholy. Not just an imbalance of black bile, but a sacred, stellar affliction. Saturn, the cold, slow, distant planet, was its patron. To be gripped by a profound, creative, paralyzing sadness was to be born under Saturn. It was your personal star sighing its heavy light through you. This was not a disease to be cured, but a cosmic temperament to be managed, even respected. It was the reason of artists, philosophers, and saints. The hidden truth here is a lost form of empathy. They saw a deep, painful sadness not as a chemical flaw, but as a kind of astrological weather in the soul, a dignified, if difficult, inheritance from the silent, spinning heavens. This is the thought to sleep on, that once, a man's despair could be framed not as a failure, but as a distant, starlit fingerprint on his mind. A shiver from a ring of cold stone, a billion miles away, making his pen move slowly, giving his thoughts their somber gravity. Let that old, poetic logic unspool the tight knots of your own mind. Let your worries be not pathologies, but passing constellations, drifting across the dark sky of this night. And as the planet turns you away from the sun, let the great, harmless influence of that spin pull you, effortlessly, into the healing dark. Silence. Only the deep, red pulse of the coals remains, a single, slow heartbeat in a dark room, watching over you until morning.